What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Uberkooledgarage. On this week's episode, we are hopping back into the bug. This video has been kind of in the works for the last couple weeks. Had an incident at work and kind of shut me down for a while. So there's quite a bit of content on here that I didn't film. If you have any questions on the process of how I got to where I am, feel free to ask in the comments and I will get back to you, or I can show you guys kind of the process that I did on a couple of these parts in the next video. So we got quite a bit of work done on Ryan's car. If you missed the last video, go back and check that one out. Super cool. We got a lot of progress to be coming on Ryan's car. He has ordered some parts and we will get those things in, get the car where it needs to be, get it running, driving, all that stuff. So got parts for his car on the way. We got some new parts for the bug, some very exciting parts. It's going to require quite a bit of change. There's quite a bit of change in this video that you guys will see. So let's go ahead and hop into this video and I hope you guys enjoy. I got 2 chunks of aluminum in mail. Well, actually it was 1 chunk of aluminum and went and cut it directly in half. So this is 1/4 inch thick, 3 inch wide, and 18 inches long. You guys may be wondering what I'm doing with this. It's actually going to be a really cool project. Well, as you guys saw in the last clip, for technically second drive did not go well. I thought the brakes were locking up, but further inspection, this transmission does have a welded diff in it. I think the combination between the tires and the welded diff are not allowing the car to actually move under its own power. As soon as I turn, it completely locks everything up. So I think the tires are just too sticky for this welded diff. So I think I'm going to pull the transmission out. Luckily, my buddy Maurice actually brought me his old transmission that blew up. So I have this stock differential with pretty fancy gear on it, so it's all polished and everything. So what happened with his is his pinion bolts backed out. You can see here that 2 or 3 of them have backed out. This one came out completely and opened up the entire side of the case. So he ended up swapping over to a 6-speed, which is pretty awesome. So there's a little bit of metal chunked out around this. The threads inside are okay, and I don't have another bolt. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably grind this smooth again, go through, pull all of these bolts, Loctite them, and torque them down probably a little bit more than what spec is. Brake clean all all of the dust and everything off of here because there's quite a bit of metal in there. So I'll clean all this up. I'll pull the transmission out of the bug, replace this with the one that's in there, test out the car. So on the last drive, I definitely made it quite a bit further than the very first one with the transmission stuff. Also went ahead and put an alignment on it, made it a whole heck of a lot better. So it actually drives really nice. It's not locking up anymore like it was, which is awesome. So it moves nice and free. But if you noticed in the very front, or one of the last clips, the turning radius is not very good. So this is still using the factory Volkswagen drop spindles that I have modified. I tried to modify them to get them to work with the way that everything is set up, but unfortunately, it's not quite right. So what I'm going to end up doing is pull all this apart, take the front spindles off, and I'm probably going to make my own. It's just kind of the easiest solution. You know, nobody makes this kit that I have completely made it from scratch. So it's time to change things. It's all trial and error at the moment. But the rear end is good. I am going to have to raise up the car just a little bit. So these are 2.5-inch drop spindles. I'll probably end up making probably 1.5-inch drop spindles. But the steering geometry is not correct with these. So go ahead and pull them apart, get them all fixed up, and try those out. See how it goes. Alright, so got my wheel up on the bench. If you noticed, the entire lip, the inside lip of my brand new wheels are both scraped up pretty darn good. It was due to a couple different things, so gonna fix all of those. Here is one of the issues. This is the lower ball joint. Here, it's hard to tell, but there is barely any clearance there all the way around. It was not hitting at all, but it is extremely close. So the A-arm bolts on top of this, when the A-arm bolts on, that comes extremely close. So I had some spacers in here that stood the lower A-arm up, which made everything clear. So I think this groove here is actually from the tabs that I welded in for the front sway bar. So those will get cut off of the front A-arms and moved. I think I'm going to go a different route with that stuff. So this, I essentially want to move this whole pickup point further up. The same with this one. So I don't like how close these two on the chassis are together. So I want to take this top one and move this top one up. And then here lies the biggest issue. So these two are okay. So what's going on here is my scrub radius. If you notice, it's going to be hard to do. If you took a line and drew it all the way across these ball joints, you notice that it ends up roughly towards the inside of the tire. Well, the center line of the tire is here, so that distance there is your scrub radius. So since these two are towards the outside of the tire, it is causing me to lift the entire car when I turn, because this distance is so far off. So it makes steering extremely heavy. It's manageable, but it's something 100% that can be improved on. So I'm going to change those angles as well. Make steering a whole lot easier stopped. It's fine when it's rolling, but when it's stopped, it's extremely heavy. This right here, the tie rod end, the way that this is set up, it is technically kind of the same as a Formula One car, which works great for those, but it does not work for street cars or track cars that have tight corners and stuff. So driving is all wonky. It doesn't want to steer very well. So this is the biggest issue here. Scrub radius will help quite a bit, but it's this. So since I designed the bug with a front steering rack, the rack sits in front of the axles, or in front of the spindles here. The geometry's a little bit different, so you want this one to be further in than your lower ball joint, and you want that section, if you drew a line in between those, to meet roughly the center of your rear axles. Mine is the opposite. So these right here, if I drew a line through them, they would point on the outside of the rear tires, which is very difficult. The wheels turn at different angles and all that stuff. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll probably end up taking some stock spindles. I'll cut off basically everything off of these, and then probably just use the actual spindle end, and I'll probably cut these off of here and then make a plate and move all my pick points where I need them. I'm also going to more than likely be taking the disc brake caliper and moving it towards the rear, like it would be if this was a stock Volkswagen disc brake setup. This is actually the driver's side, but technically on a standard Volkswagen, this would be on the passenger side because of the rear tie rod pick point. So brakes are going to end up moving. These are going to both shift up. And this is more than likely going to shift in. I'm also going to more than likely switch over to a Heim joint on the steering end. It'll tighten everything up, make it feel a lot better. Plus the ball joints that I have, or the tie rod ends that I have now, are not Volkswagen. So they don't quite work the way it needs to be. And you may notice this sensor down here. This is front wheel speed sensor. So I will build that pick point into the new Spindle as well. And that'll make a big difference. Be super nice to get everything all in one package. Well, I got a very exciting package this morning. So what we have here is a 600 horsepower rated water-to-air intercooler set. So I'm getting rid of the air-to-air that is sitting in the back of the car. So we have a giant water-to-air intercooler here. So this will sit in the back of the car. The actual charge pipes will be a lot shorter going to this. It'll clean up the entire rear of the car a lot. We have a remote fill that I will probably put in the rear next to the coolant. So these two will sit next to each other. I'll make a cap that covers both of those. Got all of our fittings, our hose clamps, our electrical adapter down in here. We have the water pump that will sit probably up front next to the fuel pumps, or just a single fuel pump and fuel filters for now. We have the hose. I have something interesting that I'm going to do with this. I'll probably just use bits and pieces of this. I do have 1-inch aluminum line that I'll be running through the car, underneath all of that. So the lines will probably end up running through the passenger side heater channel next to the radiator system. I'm going to build probably a little separator wall to keep everything separate in that section. That way the radiator lines aren't heating up the intercooler lines. And I'll probably do some heat shielding and wrap and stuff like that around all of this stuff to keep this stuff cool. There is stuff that I can do with this in the future that I kind of have a couple ideas for. So we'll get into that a little bit further. And then we have our big old huge radiator This will go to the front of the car. You can see that this is a 2.5 inch thick. It is extremely heavy. Well, it's not extremely heavy, but it's got decent bit of weight to it. So this will go in front of the radiator. I got to make brackets for this. Figure out if I want to run the fan. So this is a 7-inch fan that goes on here. I'm not 100% sure on if I'm going to run them or not. I might, but I'm gonna have to rearrange a couple things to see what we got here, what's gonna fit and how everything's gonna work out. I'm definitely probably gonna redesign quite a bit of the stuff up front, kind of like I am doing with the suspension. So we'll get all that stuff situated and moved around, but this will definitely change the car quite a bit. So we will start digging into this stuff here pretty quick. I'm also going to order a bunch of different sensors, oil temp, oil pressure. This here has a temperature probe bung in it already. So all I have to do is order the sensor, screw it in, and then we can make sure that everything here stays nice and cool. Check all of that. So also ordering wheel speed sensors, different ones than what I'm using. That way I know that they all work. So I'm gonna just try and get all the sensors and everything in this car that I can, hook up a bunch of safety features in the computer. That way, just to make sure that everything runs smooth, everything's gonna work out the way it needs to, make sure the engine's healthy, and get as much data through the car as I physically can. Okay, so got everything in the front torn apart. I did this the other day just so that I can get an idea of how everything's gonna go. I have this heat exchanger up front, just kind of messing around with ideas, what I'm gonna do. Part of one of the biggest issues that I'm having right now is the hood doesn't close with the radiator the way that it sits now. And it is also a little bit the radiator sits a little bit too low. So anytime I go over a bump or anything like that, it scrapes the bottom of the fan shroud. So I'm gonna have to figure that out between fuel cell and all of that. I was almost actually thinking about moving this bar here back about an inch, maybe, or figuring something out. I gotta figure something out with all of this stuff situation here, but the control arm or the front spindles I have been working on, you can see that they are drastically different from what they were. Flipped the brake caliper to the rear side, that way the tie rod has a new location to go. This is obviously going to get bracketed in and finish a whole bunch of stuff, but this is going to work out a whole lot better. Steering now, I just put this together and set it up. Steering is way better. It is nowhere near as heavy as it was. It is turning on the correct axis. It seems a lot better, and with this stock Volkswagen camber adjustment right here, I can adjust it fine detail around where it needs to be. So I can adjust this a tiny bit if I have to, and I can also adjust the caster in and out with the top ones, top A-arms. The lower ones I'm probably going to have to make longer mounts that stick out further, so I might have to cut those off and put longer ones on. That way I can adjust camber and stuff a little bit. I don't want to push the heim joints out of the bottom A-arm too much. And brakes, so the brake lines have to move towards the back. That way it matches up with the caliper. So I got to cut and modify and fit all of those as well. So quite a bit going on up front of the Bug at the moment, but everything here is going to drastically change it and make it way better than it ever could have been the way that it was. So start getting all this stuff situated and set up and get this thing on the road. Alright guys, so that's all I have for you this week. Next week we'll probably hop back into another Bug video. This time we'll be doing some carbon fiber work. So there's going to be quite a bit of carbon work here pretty soon. I'm gonna probably order a whole nother roll and more than likely do the passenger door, passenger rear quarter. We'll end up doing the wing and probably a couple other bits and pieces. So unfortunately the Bug didn't drive the way that I was expecting to. I am still currently in the process of fixing the problems that it had. I'm gonna kind of go through the brake system again, make sure that everything's good. The brakes were a big issue. I kind of sorted those out, and then with the steering issue, it kind of set me back. So I am in the process of building brand new front spindles with correct geometry that's more based on road course car geometry, front suspension. The way that it was set up prior was more set up like an F1 car, so it wouldn't turn unless had quite a bit of speed put behind it. So swapping all that over, very close to having that stuff done, and then in the next couple, hopefully a week, maybe two, we'll be able to really test the first drive. But we are, like I said, changing quite a bit of stuff in the front as well as the rear. So as you can see behind me, the radiator's here, the intercooler's here, got quite a bit of other parts going on. So let's, I think that's about it for this video. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out, guys.